Friends, it is good to be back home with you. And I need to be honest with you. I'm struggling a little bit this morning because I want to bring you up to speed with the last 2 weeks, but I want to make sure that I tell Jesus' story and not my story, if that makes sense. I want to make sure that we're talking about the cross and the kingdom, and not about the events in another land only. And so I've been praying a lot and thinking through a lot, and I'm going to do my best to give you a glimpse in the last couple of weeks of my time in Ukraine with God's people, but to draw our attention not to the trip, but to the kingdom. If you're wondering why I went to Ukraine and the front lines, we had the opportunity to be invited with the group I work with, Excel Leadership Network, which is a church planting movement to plant churches all over the world. We were invited to go to Ukraine and establish what we've also established in Guatemala, in Mexico, in Cuba, in Ukraine. One of the things I know is that as far as evangelism is concerned, telling people about Jesus, people are most receptive to the message of Christ when they're under tension and in transition. When people are under tension, they're looking for someone to relieve the tension. And when people are in transition, they're looking for someone to give them stability. Just think about what's going on in Ukraine. Everybody is under tension and in transition during war. And so what I told the people there was, your country is ripe for revival. Because everybody's looking for something to bring stability, for some semblance of peace. And it's Christ. And so we were invited to go to Ukraine and start this church planting movement in their country. What I told them was, I will go lead that as long as I can also go to the front lines. A couple different reasons. One, because the values of our church, 3 of them are this: irrefutable love. And what proves love more profoundly than going into someone else's battle and saying, I am with you and I love you? Presence does that more than words. Do you understand? Because that's exactly what Jesus has done for us. For God loved the world so much, he sent his son to come to the front lines of our war. Irrefutable love. That's why I had to go to the front lines as well. But also, illogical faith. We were told when we were there, listen, there's been a lot of pastors from huge churches in America that have come to Lviv, which is right on the border of Poland, on the western side where there is no conflict, basically. And they come there and take their pictures and give their money and then leave. So nobody has come from America, as far as the church is concerned, to the front lines. They don't do it. And so what that tells me is illogical faith says yes. You follow? But also one of our values is the invisible kingdom. We believe in this kingdom that you can't see right now. And it is of utmost importance and demands our all. And any opportunity we have to expand that kingdom, we're going to take. Because another one of our values is incessant reproduction. It's evangelism, it's church planting, it's what we do. And any opportunity we have to tell people about Jesus and to plant churches, we're going to take. And so I said, I have to go to the front lines. Those people need Christ. And when you get close to your own mortality, you start asking questions that you should ask before you realize you're going to die. And so I had to go to the front lines. Also because when my daddy got back from Vietnam, there was a great struggle. Any of you who have served in our military and to be in active war, you understand. that if God blesses you with living through that, you wrestle with who you became in that, oftentimes. And while there in death is redemption, we're redeemed by Jesus, sometimes in life there's a struggle with restoration. Can God restore who I've become? Knowing my own father's struggle after Vietnam in the church for people who did not understand, I was compelled by the grace of God for my father to bring that message to other men and women on the front lines. Do you understand? And so while the impetus was to plant churches and start a church planting movement in Ukraine, there was also the call to the front lines. And for me, I was not allowed to separate the two. And so let me just walk you through. This is where we were. This is Ukraine. Way on the left is Poland. And we flew into Poland, into Krakow. And through a series of buses and trains, we made our way all the way across to where the green is in Kyiv. That's the capital city of Ukraine. And if you follow the news at all, you know how much that is constantly bombed, literally almost day after day. That's the capital city. That's where we finally made it to Kyiv. And then from Kyiv, we went down to where the blue is, Cherkasy. That's right on it's the largest river in Ukraine that flows down into the Black Sea. And that's where we did our discovery centers for church planters. It took us 27 hours from when we left to get all the way up to Cherkasy. It was a grueling trip from the United States to there. From there, eventually up in the orange is Kharkiv. And again, if you follow the news, you hear that word Kharkiv. That is on the front line. It's one of the places on the front lines that is constantly shelled, drones, guided missiles, all of that. From there, down in the purple is Kramatorsk. That's the place where we lived for 3 days with the guys literally on the front lines in their little house, and then would move out to visit the troops. So that's kind of where we were. In the orange and Kharkiv, that's where I got to preach last Sunday. And I'll tell you more about all this stuff. But I want to give you a picture of when I say the front lines, what I'm talking about. We slept in where the purple is. We ministered to Donbass. That is literally on the border of Russia. That's where we were. A couple kilometers from the Russian troops. All along that area on the front lines with guys that know Jesus and guys that don't know Jesus. And we're able to do worship with them and pray over them and share communion with them and witness to them and minister to them. And so when we're talking about the front line, this is what we're talking about. We were there because that's where the opportunity was for us to expand the kingdom of God. People don't go there. They told us while we were there, there's no law, there's no overriding system to say this is allowable and not allowable. Whatever happens, happens. And so we need to know your blood type. I said it's red. And so I want to introduce you to some of the people that are there. I want you to pay attention to the names that you'll see on this piece of paper. The two men who live in that house, and it's right there on the front lines where we stayed. The wall, the exterior wall is about 18 inches of concrete. It's really thick, and they try to reinforce it well. But the two guys who live there, his name is Vadim and Sasha. I want you to put them on your prayer list. Vadim and Sasha. They have determined that God has called them to the ministry of the front lines. They've sent their families, their wives and children to Germany. And they've said, God has called us to ministry to the people on the front lines. And so they see their family about once every 3 months. And every day they start their day with scripture reading and worship. That was the worship music, and communion, reminding themselves of the kingdom that they serve, the God that they serve, and that God has called them to this work. They ask for his provision, they ask for his safety, and they ask that through them, God would save people who are lost without Christ. Those names on the papers, 3 different lists. Names of men and women who have been killed in the war that they had ministered to, that they remember. Names of those who are missing in action, and then names of the current ones that they're currently ministering to. So they can keep track of them with their families, care for them, care for their souls. And every day they just make their way down the front lines in worship, in foxholes, in bunkers, making sure that the guys know God hasn't forgotten about you. He knows you and he sees you. He loves you, and we're here for you. They're amazing people. Amazing people. Every community has this. These are memorials in every community. Every flag represents someone who's been killed from that community during this war. Every flag represents a life. And I've shared some of these on social media while I was there to give you a picture. But I want you to understand how pervasive and what they're living under. These little memorials just keep growing. And it's a stark reminder of life and death and eternity. And that life is fleeting. This is the top story of one of 3 apartment complexes. Has nothing to do with the military. Completely civilian. And the results of Russian drone attacks and guided missile attacks. At the basement of this building, people ran for safety and they were smothered and 50 of them died. The hole there is where the middle building was. There were 3 buildings. Community after community, this is the reality. There's more buildings that are destroyed than are untouched. And this is what they live with. A constant reminder that of what their reality is. This is going towards the front lines. That's a drone net. They don't have them on all the roads. They have them on some of the roads. That's their attempt to prevent one of the smaller drones from getting through to the traffic. There's some music going off that someone needs to realize it's their phone and turn it off. This is one of the bunkers where we were with some of the guys on the front lines. And they didn't let me go all the way down. We went all the way down, but they didn't let me film all the way down past their stuff. But there's 2 4-man troops that rotate 2 days on and 2 days off. And it goes down a couple of different layers. And these guys have watch for the Russian drones that fill the skies. And they have their own surveillance drones that they'll send out to kind of keep movement or keep eyes on the Russian troop movements. Again, right on the front lines there. While we were there, there were a lot of events that were happening on the outside when we were underground. And this is what they live with. And there's a man here. I think I have him. He's the tall bald guy, not the short bald guy. And his name is Sergey. and he loves the Lord, and he follows Jesus. And he's got 3 guys in his unit with him who don't know the Lord. And he is there not just to do his service, but to witness to them, to help them come to faith. And in the middle of that, that's their biggest room in the bunker. It goes down into another room. 2 guys are up top there, kind of keeping eyes out if there's any boots troops coming at them. 1 guy sleeps and 1 guy is on the computer with the drone. And that's where they live for 2 days on and 2 days off. And so we got to be with them. We got to worship with them. We got to encourage them. For these guys and for some other troops I was with on a place called Seven Winds, this outlook that looks over this valley, and they had their, military guys there with their weapons looking for drones coming in and missiles. And I told them, I said, guys, I want you to understand something. You as commanders have under you men who rely on you. And your job is not just to fulfill the commands of your commanding officer, but is to secure the life of your men. And if need be, lay down your life for them. I said, I want you to understand something. That reminds me of another man who at the command of his commanding father was given the charge of watching after the lives of those under him to secure their life, and if need be, give his life for them, which he did. I said, I want you to understand something, that you are for your men. You can be a visible reminder of Christ. So lead well. Lead well and serve well. And help them reframe what their role is in this. And that's who he is to these guys. He's a visible picture of one who came into their conflict, their war, and gave his life. And it was really significant. We were able to go just outside that bunker in this big concrete room and lead him in prayer and worship and do communion with him. We anointed him with oil. We prayed over him. All while the explosions are going around outside. And it was a beautiful moment of worship. It was a beautiful moment of ministry. And it was a beautiful realization that God is the God of minutes and moments. Time and time and time again while we were there, it was minutes or moments that separated us, either on just before something happened or just after something happened. That God was orchestrating all the minutes and the moments that we were there. There was never fear, there was never concern, because we knew, every one of us there knew that God was the God of minutes and moments. Do you understand that? For your minutes and moments, guess what? God is the God of them all. Minutes and moments. Just before or just after. Multiple times. Where you realize, okay, Lord, you're the God of my minutes and my moments. And you're orchestrating them all. So what have I to fear? Right? Time and time again. Had it been a moment earlier or a moment later, things happened. We got to rescue people. We got to care for them. Because we knew God is the God of minutes and moments, and he positioned us strategically. And it was beautiful to get to be a part of. That's Dasha. She doesn't know a world without war. She's living on the front lines. And her family had to be extracted. The day we got her and her family out, Right at the tail end of getting them out, the drones came and decimated her neighborhood. And that night, she spent her first night in safety in her whole life. And it was beautiful. Minutes and moments. I got to preach in Kharkiv on the front lines last Sunday. And when they do church service there, they have a basement so that when the air raid goes off, the church goes down to the basement and they keep worshiping. And because their country is under tension and in transition, the message of the gospel is good news. And probably about a quarter of the people in that church made a decision for Jesus that morning. It was beautiful. We shared communion together. Because when you realize how close your mortality is, you start asking eternal questions and looking for eternal answers. The guy to the right and the lady next to me and the lady next to me, that's the pastor and his wife. Years ago, she was diagnosed with cancer, very aggressive, fast-spreading cancer. The doctor said there's nothing we can do. So just take her home and let her be comfortable. And the pastor and his wife prayed and they said, Lord, your will be done. But if you give my wife life, we will stay in this community and we will proclaim your name and plant churches. And miraculously, suddenly she was healed. No ramifications, no proof of cancer at all in her body. And then the war broke out. The war's been going on since 2014. The current invasion has been since 2022. And so as this invasion is happening, his wife said, honey, we're on the front lines. We need to move. Everybody's leaving. They're going to Germany and Poland. We need to go. And he said, sweetie, what did we tell God? That if he gave you life, we would stay and we would minister and we would plant churches. We're not going anywhere. You know why? Because they believe in an invisible kingdom and they have illogical faith, just like us. Their kids left with their grandkids. And she said, honey, not only are we on the front lines, but now I don't get to see our children or our grandchildren. And he said, sweetie, we told God that if he gave you life, we would stay. And when we give God our yes, we cannot take it back. We'll get our kids in eternity. Right now on this earth, we're staying. Sometimes, this is how I feel. Sometimes it's good for donkeys and jackasses to be around thoroughbreds. That's what I felt like. Can you imagine that level of commitment to the kingdom? One of these guys told me, they said, before this war, before I was here on the front lines, I would get so worked up. I want a different car. I want a bigger house. I want a better job. I want more. He said, but now, things have been clarified. And if God gives me one more day on this planet, I'll be grateful. And especially gives me one more person to share Jesus with. That's the first group of staff and church planters that we worked with to plant churches. And Excel Leadership Network, we follow Acts 13. God calls high-level leaders and sets them apart for church ministry and for planting churches. And any chance we get to go call out and train high-level leaders to plant churches, we're going to take it. And these were some of the first ones that we got to work with in Ukraine to start a church planting movement because they want their country to come to faith. That was the first group. This is the second group. During our time while we were there, one of the largest strikes, guided missile and drone strikes on Kharkiv, decimated parts of the city, decimated the place where we were just 24 hours earlier. God of minutes and moments. As I walk into the training room for all these church planters and pastors, we had to address because it was their family, it was their loved ones, it was their homes that have just been destroyed. And they're here to serve God and to honor God and to plant churches. And we had to, how do you deal with that? This is how they dealt with it. We woke up early in the morning to the drones overhead and the explosions around. We get word that what has happened in Kharkiv. And their first response was, let's worship God. Name above all names. Worthy of our praise. How great, oh how great is our God. And I'm standing there and I'm filming this and I'm just crying thinking, Lord, why? Why isn't that my first response? When something bad happens. Which you really have to redefine bad sometimes. Their first response was, God is a good God. Worthy is his name. Though there was great sadness, there wasn't depression. Though there was confusion, there wasn't rage. There was worship. That's one of the couples that I got to work with that is part of Excel Network Planting Churches. Young families. They have 4 kids. She's pregnant with their 5th. And every one of them has the opportunity to leave and to go to Poland or Germany. And they've said, God's called us here. We can't leave. We can't leave. He saved us from hell. How can we leave? They say it would be so disingenuous to say, God, you saved us. Now I'm going to leave and let others fend for themselves. I can't. We have to stay. And so they are. There's one young man a couple who was working with us. And he's right on the front lines. And they're so committed to the youth of that area. They don't have buildings to meet in. They've all been destroyed. And he will do a little WhatsApp app and say at 3 o'clock on Tuesday, we're going to meet in that burned out field. Let's just get together, talk about Jesus and worship. Let's meet at this burned out intersection on the side of the road. And let's just talk about God. This is another couple who's going to plant a church. I think they're 12 or 13 years old. They had the same conversation. We're just starting our lives. Why would we stay in Ukraine on the front lines and plant churches? And the resounding answer is because Christ gave his life. And this is where he's put us. He's the God of the minutes and the moments, and we'll stay. You think if people could have an excuse not to go to church and not to do ministry, it would be them. There's a group of young people and a lot of young ladies, incredible incredible leaders, valiant women warriors who are so committed to their God and their faith. They make things like this, and the military patches are a big deal. In the current military, you get patches for missions served and ranks and all kinds of stuff. And so what they're doing is they're making patches, and they're taking these to the troops on the front lines so they can use these patches and talk about Jesus. You understand the symbolism of that, don't you? John 3:16, the crown of thorns. And they'll get these patches and they'll go into the bunkers and into the trenches, and the young ladies talking to these men, and here, I want you to understand who Jesus is, what he's done for you. So they'll put it on and remember. One of the patches, and the patches is this, and I love this patch. I put it on one of my hats. The X represents the commands of God that have been defiled and broken. That's why it's in black. It's dark. It's been darkened. Because, and you men and women who have served in the military, you know this, especially if you've been in war. Oftentimes there are things that soldiers do in battle that cause them to question, who am I? Who have I become? How do I reconcile what I've had to with who I want to be as a human? It's one of the things my dad struggles with. And he came back after Vietnam to a church that didn't understand and wouldn't have accepted him had they known, really known. And you guys who have been in war, you understand this. You women, you understand this. And you have to wrestle with, what have I done? Who have I become? And can I be redeemed, and can I be restored? So one of the ministries that these young ladies are doing with these men who are wrestling with this question, who, if they get to come back to the world, are met with all of this, yeah, but you. So what they tell them is, we've all broken God's law. Every one of us. We defiled his commands. And no matter what that looks like for you, there's a cross that covers it. Through the death and resurrection of Jesus, there's not just redemption, there's restoration. Beautiful, strong, young women who are engaging in these soldiers on the front lines to take them the gospel. You know why? Because the people want their country saved. It's incredible. And they understand God is the God of minutes and moments. And so there's this incredible resiliency and faith and courage and commitment, not to run away, but to run and engage. So, thank you. Thank you for your prayers. When I told them that there was a church back in the United States that was praying for them 24 hours a day, every hour, every day, he couldn't understand it. Because have you ever, now we're not in that type of war situation, but I bet we've had those times where something's going on and we think, God, do you even know I'm here anymore? Do you even care about what's going on in my world? Like, where are you? Have you ever, anybody? That's how they all feel. Would you understand? And to have a visible reminder that there's an invisible church and kingdom that is interceding before God on their behalf, they were absolutely overwhelmed. And they told me to tell you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Because you are the ones that stand in the gap with them. And they know they're not alone. You've been so generous. I was able to give every church planting couple $500, which is a year's salary for pastors there. Just to say we love you, and it's not just lip service. You're such a good church. And they wanted to make sure I told you thank you for letting your pastor go. I mean, there's other churches might go and take some photo ops and use it as propaganda. You partnered with me, and we were there with them on the front lines in the bunkers and trenches. And it's important. So what's next? Well, I'm going back to Ukraine. Because there's churches that have to be planted. And we have to establish this thing so they can run it on themselves so we don't have to keep going back. But in the beginning we do. Because we believe in an invisible kingdom and incessant reproduction. That's why we're here. The Holy Spirit, He woke me up on Thursday morning and He gave me this. It's wrong for people who want to be right simply to do no wrong rather than do what's right. It woke me up in such startle with those words ringing through my ears, I had to write it down. It's wrong for people who want to do right simply not to do wrong rather than do what's right. D.L. Moody said this. Our greatest fear should not be failure, but in succeeding, it's something that doesn't really matter. We've been given such grace here, and it's beautiful, it's wonderful, and I don't want to guilt us into the enjoyment of grace. But I want us to realize the grace we've been given and not waste it. In succeeding at stuff that doesn't really matter. And so, I have 7 minutes to preach my message. Couple big ideas. Friends, because God is the God of your minutes and your moments, trust even when it feels like the clock's ticking against you. Remain patient and stay faithful in the minutes before the moments come. And be bold to step into your moment when it comes. If God is the God of your minutes and your moments, be bold and step into them without fear and without trepidation. I believe with all my heart, you've heard me say this before, I hope you're starting to believe me when I say it, that as long as you are on God's mission for your life, you are absolutely invincible until that mission is complete. Do you understand? God is the God of your minutes and your moments. He works in the tiniest detail and He works in the big life-altering opportunities. Whether it's a 5-second decision or a 5-year delay, God is the God of your minutes and your moments. You've got nothing to fear. Trust Him. Be bold and be courageous. Because God is the God of minutes and moments, you can trust His precision. He's a precise God, and God is the God of every minute that you think you've missed. He's the God of every moment, every minute. We get so wrapped up in what we think we've missed out on. God says, would you just relax? I'm the God of it all. The Israelites came before the Red Sea and they were completely trapped. The army behind them, the sea before them. They had no way out. They didn't know what they were going to do. They thought, God, you missed the moment, you missed the minute. And God said, I haven't missed a darn thing. And what God said through Moses was this: don't be afraid, stand firm and see the salvation of the Lord. He's going to work out. Relax. God is the God of your minutes and your moments. Stand where you are. Be firm. You will see the salvation of the Lord. Because God is the God of your minutes and your moments. God didn't open the sea early. We want God to work in ahead of time for us. So it requires no faith to follow. That's not how God works. We trust Him in the minutes and the moments. See, we can follow God before He acts because we know what? He will act. So we can follow Him before He does a thing because we know He will do a thing. And so we can follow without fear, without trepidation, with completely unreserved. Because we know that just at the right time, he'll step in. Because that's what he does. You may be waiting on a healing. You may be waiting on a spouse. You may be waiting on an opportunity. Don't confuse silence with absence. God is timing every minute and every moment. You can trust him. And because God is the God of the minutes and the moments, you can trust the bigger picture. He's got a bigger picture that he sees and we don't. Trust him in the minutes and the moments. One moment with God can change every moment after. Don't run away from him. Don't run out on him. One moment with God can change every moment after. This was the story of Esther. I won't tell you the whole story, but she was given this position in a kingdom for a purpose, for a moment. And what she was told is this: if you don't step into your moment, God will move just without you. You'll suffer the consequences of not stepping into the moment God has prepared you for. But who knows? Maybe this moment has come in your life for such a time as this. God is orchestrating your moments and your minutes. His perspective is bigger. One moment with God can change every moment after. Friends, you understand? See, we want from God something to just look big and powerful and divine, but we have to understand that God's moments often don't look divine. They look like hard choices. They look like risky obedience. They look like unexpected opportunities. And in the hard moments and the risky obedience and the unexpected opportunities, you realize this might be God's moment. And we got to realize every one of us faces God's minutes and moments that he's ordained, and those moments are often disguised as hard decisions dressed in ordinary clothes. Faithfulness in the moment without running away. Commitment in the moment without tapping out. You say, God, you are the God of the minutes and the moments. And though this minute and moment looks horrible right now, I'm going to trust you in the midst of it, and I'm going to be faithful. And I'm not going anywhere. Sometimes the greatest test of faith isn't in doing things, it's just in waiting. And it was so good for me to be in Ukraine with those people because they're just waiting right now on God's intervention. And they're praying for miracles, no doubt. But they're realizing that before the miracle, God is still in the moment. And so 3 things real quick. How do you live in God's timing? Without tapping out, without running away, with faith and courage and boldness. How do you do it? Well, the one thing you do is you stay in the Word of God. Your word, Lord, is a lamp to my feet and a light to my path. We will never understand God's timing of the minutes and the moments until we can understand and hear his voice. And we know the voice of God through his word. I don't understand all that's going on, but I know that my God is the God of minutes and moments. Do you understand? You stay in his word and you trust his process. Romans 8:28, a soft pillow for a tired heart. For those who love God, not for those who don't, but for those who love God, he works all things together for good somehow. I don't know how. I don't have those answers. I just have that faith that says he does. I don't know how the people in Ukraine say, God, you're going to I don't know, but they do. And one of the things I told them is God can redeem this if you use this to win people to Jesus. Let God redeem the evil, not by making you bitter and cynical, but by making you motivated to tell people about Christ. See, even the detours of your life can be part of his design. If you trust that he's the God of your minutes and your moments. Some of you are in a huge delay right now. And the dreams are falling apart. Trust God that He is still the God of your delays. He's still the God of your disappointments because He's the God of your minutes and your moments. You got nothing to be afraid of. And be faithful in the waiting. Galatians 6:9, don't get tired. Don't grow weary in doing what's right with God. In due season, the harvest is going to come. Do you understand? Lord, I'm going to be faithful in the moment. I'm not running to Poland. I'm not running to Germany. I'm going to be faithful right now. See, we have to understand that when I'm faithful in the minutes, God is fruitful in my moments. Some of you need to write that down, take a screenshot on our app, take a picture. You need to remember this, that when I'm faithful in the minutes, God is fruitful in my moments. And some of you are waiting on God to be fruitful in your moments. You need to start being faithful in your minutes. You follow? Listen. Every one of us wants God to step in and intervene miraculously. We all want God to show up. But we have to understand this, that God is not just in the miracle. God is in the minutes before the miracle. And some of you are waiting on God to step in and do something miraculous and wonderful and beautiful. And God says, look, I'm willing to, but I want you to first acknowledge me, that I'm not just in the miracle, I'm in the minutes before the miracle. And you won't see me in the miracle until you acknowledge me before the miracle. Do you understand? He's not just in the miracle, He's in the minutes before it. And so, dear friends, I want to encourage us, because we serve a God of the minutes and the moments, to live boldly, to be courageous, and live with great joy. Our response in this moment to God is thank you. Thank you for forgiveness. Thank you for your grace. Thank you that you are the God of my minutes and my moments. I will trust you. And I will be faithful in the midst of my minutes and my moments. Our response is, God, you deserve all of me, unreservedly. I believe it was Jim Elliot, missionary to the Aka Indians, who was killed and beheaded as he was telling them about Jesus. He said, he is no fool who gives what he cannot keep to gain what he cannot lose. You're not a fool to give what you cannot keep, your life, to gain what you cannot lose, salvation. You are no fool to give what you cannot keep, to gain what you cannot lose. He who seeks to save his life will lose it. He who loses his life for my sake, Jesus says, will gain it. All in, every minute and moment, because he deserves it all. Do you understand? This is what it means to follow Jesus. We've been given so much grace here, and it's beautiful, and it's wonderful, and it ought to be enjoyed and celebrated. And I don't want to guilt us into enjoying God's grace, but I want to warn us not to waste it. Don't waste the grace of God. Fully engaged, all in, trusting the God of the minutes and the moments. You understand? Thank you. You are a world-class church. And the kingdom is expanding in this world because of you. And it is a joy to get to be a part of you. and to do this together. Let's pray. Father, thank you. Thank you that you are the God of the minutes and the moments. You're trustworthy. You're good. You're the only God there is. There's none like you. You're the creator of heaven and earth, and you're the God of every one of our minutes and moments. And we praise you and honor you because of who you are. Father, I thank you that you've given us the opportunity to be a part of your work in this world. Here in the ranchos, and in places like Ukraine. You're so good to invite us into your work. Thank you for the opportunity you've given us to say yes to it. Father, I pray that through this church, you would continue to grow your kingdom, expand your kingdom. That you would call us into service, that you would employ us in your work, that we would respond with great boldness and courage and joy and sacrifice and generosity. God, that we would follow you unreservedly, unashamedly. Father, that you would increase and we would decrease. That's our prayer. Thank you for this church. Thank you for their generosity. Thank you for their faithfulness. Father, I thank you for what you're doing in us and with us. Continue. I pray that we trust you to be the God of our minutes and our moments. Guys, I want, like in this moment right now, shut your eyes. Just pray with me for a minute. If you've never trusted God to be the God of your minutes and your moments, if you've never trusted him asked him to forgive your sin and given your life to this God that loves you, that would come to the front lines of your life and give himself for your salvation, your saving. If you've never done that, I want to invite you in this moment right now to do that. Simple prayer. It will cost you your life. It's all worth it. Say, God, forgive me of my sin. I admit I've broken your law, your command. I need forgiveness. I can't be good. I can't be right in myself. Make me right with you. I believe in what Jesus did on the cross. I accept you, Jesus, as the Savior and the leader of my life. This morning, I trust you. Would you just pray that prayer? Father, thank you. We love you. Help us to love you more. In your name I pray, amen. Listen, if any of you made that prayer, just come talk to me afterwards. Talk to us in the start here, or the Welcome Center. I want to walk you through some next steps. I got a little book I wrote I want to give you. But let me tell you this, man. I'm thankful for you. I'm very thankful for you. Thank you. And I'm really thankful for our wife. Just imagine, just for a moment, you wives. If your husband came to you and said, hey, I got this idea. Imagine you husbands, if your wife came to you and said, hey, honey, I got this idea. Imagine for a moment if your son or your daughter said, hey, mom and dad, guess what? God's called me. So thank you for being a church that says, we get it. We'll support you. I'm thankful for you. And I'm really thankful for my bride. You come back next week because we're going to start a series through the book of Matthew. It's going to take us about a year to get through it. Verse by verse, don't worry, it's going to be good. So start this week reading the book of Matthew chapter 1. You're going to read a whole big long genealogy. It's not going to make much sense to you, but we'll unpack it next Sunday. You understand? We got a great opportunity to get a real clear vision of who Jesus is, the one who came and died, so we could live. I love you. Let's sing.